Thanks very much, everyone. I'm surprised to see most of you are still here, even after the pieces. So I'll take that as a compliment. This is the first time I've seen this many people in a room for quite some time. I should imagine that's probably common to quite a few of you. It's a tad different to sitting behind a webcam on a Teams call, which is mostly how I've been given these things lately. I'm leading with a very Tesco Bank sort of style slide, a lot of what we kind of use internally. But I'll be honest, my style is kind of more something along this sort of line. I need to kind of pare it back a bit. I need to make it a bit more about technology. The kind of theme around this here is we're going from level 1 into level 2. I'm going to milk the video game theme of this as much as possible by just inserting random pictures and random references all the way throughout. But I thought we kind of wanted to make it a little bit more interesting. So who am I? Why am I here? And why should any of you care? So I'm Jamie Hurst. I'm a principal engineer at Tesco Bank. I've been there now for almost 3 years. Was recruited probably just around the time that DevHub North kicked off, which is quite timely. I help look after all of our cloud applications. There are quite a few and the number is growing. I want to make sure that the bank always stays online, that we're providing a good service for our customers and our colleagues. We've got enough capacity for it. I help set up a few of the new solutions and systems, help migrate some of the stuff that we've got in the data center, and it's all mostly within AWS. Every now and then they let me write Java, which is quite nice, but yeah, that's a little bit of a bonus, still a little bit hands-on. What I'm here today to kind of talk a little bit about is what Tesco Bank technology, which was formerly Tesco Bank CIO, looks like under the hood, what we've been up to for kind of the last 2.5 years since we were last here at DevHub North. I like to think that a couple of years ago we were probably still at level 1, especially in our Newcastle Tech Hub. It was just getting started. Things have changed a little since then, not just on kind of the life front, but a lot more of what we've been doing inside of technology as well. As always, I'm going to do the kind of quick peddle while I'm up here. We've always got opportunities, we've always got open positions. Head to careers.tescobank.com. I'll kind of put a few more bits and pieces up on the end, and obviously feel free to grab me and talk in depth about any of the roles that we've got open at the moment. I don't want to kind of talk at everyone for 20 minutes. I'm conscious that those sorts of things don't work. If anyone's got a question while I'm going through here, please don't hesitate, stick your hand up. I'm quite happy to kind of pause and do it. I think it's a lot easier to ask the questions while we're talking through the context of it, rather than wait until the end. My boss, Ian, at the back there is going to be incredibly awkward and already ask a question. If I what, sorry? Oh, dear me. That's a very good one. I think Pac-Man. I think we're probably just because it's the first one that's come into my head. I'll try and think of a reason why, and I'll come back to you in 5 minutes while I'm trying to run through this. So, how do we get started? As I said, I've made this quite difficult for myself by trying to incorporate as many different games into this as possible. These are the to-do lists from Untitled Goose Game. If any of you haven't played Untitled Goose Game, it's absolutely brilliant. You get to run around as a goose causing general mayhem. I highly recommend it. So to start off, to kind of recap where we were, at the start of 2020, kind of around the January sort of time, just after we'd started our Newcastle Tech Hub, our to-do list looked a little bit like this. We can kind of tick off the AWS cloud capability. We were kind of in the cloud. We'd migrated some of our services across. We had a little bit of an idea around how we wanted to do automation. Some services such as insurance, for example, had been in there for a little while. The cloud platform team had actually come down to DevHub North, and it kind of showed all the work that they'd been doing over that time. So things were kind of getting off the ground. That was quite good. We'd created the Newcastle Tech Hub tick. I'll show you what that kind of looked like in a second. There's that kind of picture on the left. There's a mural that we've got on the wall that one of the customer service colleagues did for us. It's fantastic. That's not really doing it justice. It's absolutely huge. And we'd started building the teams. We'd kind of worked out what roles we need, what it was that we wanted to do within the Tech Hub, what products we wanted to take on first, and we started advertising for it. We had a good idea of where we would go, and everything felt quite comfortable. On the list of things still outstanding, the first thing and the main reason that Newcastle had been stood up, and this really is old news now, was to manage insurance. We essentially had a lot of our insurance colleagues in the Newcastle office. That's where the customer service calls were coming in from. That's where a lot of them understood the business, understood how it all worked. It made perfect sense to set up the technology arm in the back of the building upstairs for the people to come and shout at when none of the insurance systems worked. sounded like a good plan, right? That was exactly where we were. We needed to get all of our remaining team members. We want to start to actually deliver some change. We want to start to make some improvements for our colleagues, for our customers. We were quite eager to get off the ground and start to make some things happen. And we also had a little bit of an idea to explore a new product. There was a little product called gift cards that was kicking around at the time, and we managed to pick it up in Newcastle as one of the things that we drove forward. And I'll kind of talk about that a little later on as well. So there's still quite a lot to do. There was quite a lot to get going, but we had the basics. You'll forgive me. I haven't used PowerPoint in essence for a while. I love PowerPoint animations. I'm going to just use as many as I can throughout the presentation, and these are just going to have to put up with it. Sorry. This is how our space looked. It was ready, but you can see there's quite an absence of people there. We had a load of hot desk ideas. Hot desk set up. We had collaboration spaces with whiteboard walls where you can see we're starting to explore exactly what it is that we want to do there. We had some of our gift cards, product designs, and some of the user stories that we're working through on the board there while we're all kind of talking through it. And we had some little bits to go off and have calls and some meeting area. There was a little bit of foreshadowing there. You can see one of our presence units as we bought at the time, which was to facilitate working between our Newcastle and Edinburgh office. It's obviously been used for quite a lot more remote work from that since then. But we had everything set up. We were ready to go. For some reason, it's decided to do the. You can see I haven't done this for a while, can't you? So by March 2020, I really wanted to try and do this in a different way by showing like a Fallout screen or something, but never mind. The information is the most important bit. We had a hot desk and collaboration space in Newcastle. We were kind of up and running from that side of things. We had 2 products in development. We were moving forward on insurance, and we were also starting to look at gift cards. Future was looking good. We already had 20 team members by this point. That was made up of project managers, analysts, engineers of varying degrees, cloud, software, data, test. We had quite a few people coming on board. We still had 15 more team members who'd accepted, who we'd interviewed, who were coming on board, just waiting to get started. They were kind of waiting for their notice periods to end and to go through a few checks and things. And I think we'd probably covered around 15,000 total miles by that point, travelling between Newcastle and Edinburgh to try and work out how we can transfer insurance, what it is that we need to do. We all became quite familiar with the sights and sounds of the East Coast Main Line. I think we've got more than enough pictures of Torness Power Station, other bits and pieces as you kind of travel up and down on there. So things were going quite well. That was kind of how the bank looked at the time, especially the kind of CIO side of things. We had things set up quite separately. We had teams up in what we call EHQ, our kind of main head office up in Edinburgh there. We had our little satellite tech hub that was set up there in Newcastle, and we had quite a few colleagues over in Glasgow as well. A lot of them were kind of looking after the customers, running some of the call centres and stuff. So things were working out quite well. We had a good plan. Obviously, the difficulty level suddenly increased, didn't it, around the sort of end of March 2020, as well as being able to try and bring on as many new people as we could, as well as trying to transfer new product, trying to learn how the bank worked, setting up a complete new technology function. We suddenly couldn't go into the office, and we had to work out how we were going to onboard 15 and more people remotely, how we were going to build out a team of people, and how we were going to try and actually get everyone to talk to each other and build that team experience over Teams. So the site there has probably been quite familiar to a lot of you. Some of you are probably on Slack and Zoom when we're an Office 365 house, so Teams has been our kind of our one of choice over that time. But obviously we're all suddenly 100% remote and quite quickly, along with all of our colleagues in Edinburgh and elsewhere. So we very quickly realised that the value of pairing and collaborating to onboard some of these colleagues, making sure that we understood everything end to end from a documentation point of view, from a analysis and a requirements point of view, we ended up writing down a lot more than we otherwise would. And we ended up setting up the likes of pseudo office chats. I think we kind of had all day meetings where they're not really meetings. People used to drop in and out, and we used to kind of have little chats and not talk about work to try and create the office experience. It never quite took off, but we were doing our best. We got people on board, and it was pretty successful. So we'd kind of entered the working from home zone. You know, that was kind of the way that we'd gone. So the to-do list started to pivot a bit. We started to change things around. We realised that the original priorities we had maybe weren't quite what we were looking for anymore. We needed, first of all, to make sure that all of our colleagues That's everyone in the call centre, everyone who was still having to travel in, everyone who was kind of managing a lot of the technology piece, everyone had to be able to be supported remotely. A lot of the technology teams in the bank worked quite tirelessly those first few weeks to make sure that we had enough VPN capacity. Up until that point, I think a few of us had worked from home maybe once a week. Suddenly everybody had to go all the way through this VPN connection that maybe wasn't quite set up for it. We had to start handing out Chromebooks to a lot of our colleagues in the call centre because they were usually using desktops on site and things like that. So there were quite a lot of logistical challenges for what this looked like. We obviously had to onboard all of our team members remotely. That involved having quite a lot of phone calls saying things like, have you been able to get your webcam to work yet? No, why not? Oh dear, and things like that. That was always quite good. But the priorities around the products changed as well. So gift cards, for example, was a little bit of a spin-off, a little bit of a product that we wanted to develop to try and capture some more of the market, to try and make the gift cards that we sell at Tesco tills a little bit easier to purchase online for consumers as well. But we realised that there was a little bit of an opportunity there to try and help some of our customers who were stuck in with COVID, who were maybe a little bit more vulnerable, who were having to shield. I'll kind of touch on that in a little bit. We still wanted to manage insurance from Newcastle. We still wanted to get on board with insurance. We were still transferring all of these systems down, trying to work out how all of that worked. We were getting on quite well by that point, by kind of April or May. So this is where I kind of deviate from the video games bit a bit because I couldn't figure out how to get this to work in a nice sort of way. But e-gift cards is probably one of the pieces I'm most proud of as a Newcastle tech hub that we delivered back in the day. We pivoted the original product idea for gift cards quite quickly and worked out that what we wanted to do was, rather than just sell gift cards online, we wanted it to help Tesco customers, as I said. We built a COVID-focused product that essentially supported vulnerable customers who were shielding and were unable to use the online grocery shopping tool. They weren't literate, they weren't computer literate, they maybe weren't able to do that, but they still needed volunteers to help them by going out and getting their shopping at Tesco shops, etc. So the way we did it was we set up a volunteer gift card. We built a system that was rapidly prototyped. We used new technology that we'd never used at the bank by that point. Things like Kotlin, because why would we want to use Java when Kotlin was the nice new fancy thing? And frankly, it helped us to deliver it faster. We weren't writing a lot of the models and everything that we needed to in Java. Kotlin enabled us to go a little bit faster. It enabled us to experiment with things such as test-driven development. We hooked it up to Azure at the time rather than AWS because Tesco stores were on Azure and we wanted to be close to all of their APIs, all of their systems. They were using Kubernetes and they were using things like Redis, so we immediately adapted to their platform and delivered a containerized solution on this. We hooked up to a lot of the Tesco stores APIs, so the identity API that you use whenever you're signing in to retrieve your shopping, to log into your online order, their contact API for sending out emails and SMS notifications. We got this built and tested and into production within 28 working days, which I think at the time was a record for the bank for something that was brand new, all the way through conception, all the way through to getting a product out there. And that was really helpful. I think we sold around about 50,000 volunteer gift cards in those first few days while people were coming online. Main thing was that we were helping people, we were making a little bit of a difference. So this was a big success for the Newcastle Tech Hub at that point. Very pleased. Since then the product's still there. You can go to tescogiftcards.com. We do a lot more with it now. We've got third-party gift cards on there. We have delayed sending. If you buy a gift card, you can send it to someone and there's a pinata you can hit to try and open the gift card. Spent a lot of time on that animation, so please make sure that you like that one. And obviously we transferred over the insurance system. I can't kind of begin to explain the scale of what it is that we do within insurance at Tesco Bank, but we do run a lot of the stuff ourselves. We do host a lot of it ourselves. And there's a lot involved in trying to make sure that we're coordinating the whole business together whenever we're releasing a new insurance system, whenever we're making any changes to this. There was a lot of learned knowledge from folks up in Edinburgh who've been there for quite a long time, who delivered the system into the cloud in the first place. We took all of that on board, brought it down to Newcastle at the time, and we started releasing new versions of the insurance system. But we also started looking at what we can do to try and improve things, to try and make changes. This was the first product that had been into the cloud within Tesco Bank back in kind of late 2017. And it was and still is fully automated using technology such as CloudFormation, Ansible, quite a lot of bash scripting in there as well. Jenkins pipelines and the like. It did exactly what it needed to do. But there was quite a lot that we needed to start picking up around improving it. So one of the first things we did, for example, was move from CloudFormation, which most of us hadn't quite used up until that point, very AWS specific. We started to look at Terraform. A lot of the guys who come at the Newcastle Tech Hub were much more familiar with Terraform, myself included, for that matter. So we transformed all of our front-end journeys to deliver using Terraform. That allowed us to release any of our new home and motor insurance journeys using kind of an A-B blue-green pattern without taking an outage. Up until that point, everyone had to log in at 4 o'clock in the morning when no one was buying insurance and start putting outage pages up and make sure things were working and all that kind of stuff. We were doing away with all of that. We just wanted to do it at 10 o'clock in the morning when everyone was in and just switch it over and make sure it worked. And when it didn't, we could back it out within 2 seconds because it's just a DNS change. Why would we not do it that way? That made sense, right? So that's the sort of thing that we were starting to look at. But at this point, things were still a little bit different. We were still kind of separated from Edinburgh as a technology area, I would say. Obviously, the landscape had slightly changed. People were now everywhere, all up and down Scotland, all up and down England, working from home. And the whole idea of us having separate kind of Edinburgh and Newcastle teams didn't really make a lot of sense anymore. So we were all now one remote team. We kind of recently renamed ourselves from CIO to technology. I think that probably reflects a little bit more of what we're doing. We're now firmly out of kind of level 1. I'm still going to dwell on the fact that I called this level 1 to level 2, and we're now getting firmly into level 2, and things are changing quite a lot more. We're starting to share on a lot of the success that we do as a kind of wider technology team, and Newcastle has kind of become part of that. So we needed to align our to-do list with the rest of technology, and this is kind of giving you a little bit of an impression of what it is that we kind of do up until today. Insurance wasn't Newcastle anymore. Insurance became something that was just looked after widely by technology. But you can see by this point, kind of around where we are right now, we've migrated more than 50% of our apps into the cloud. Up until then, a lot of the applications, a lot of the services that we had were kind of split between maybe data centers, maybe in a different kind of platform. We've started to get a lot of that now into our AWS platform. Started to make sure we've got that we're making the most out of the knowledge that we've got, out of the services that we've got available. We're obviously on a plan, as you can see on the third line there, to get, I think we might have hit 75% now, but I don't think we're probably going to stop until we get absolutely everything that we possibly can into the cloud. There'll be a couple of systems that we still have to have on-prem, but not really a great deal. We want to try and make everything as easy as possible. We're not just migrating things into the cloud anymore either. We've traditionally, we were making use of things such as EC2 instances, auto-scaling groups, load balancers, RDSs. We'd taken kind of what I would say was like the level 1 AWS approach, and we've made the most out of that. We're now starting to move towards an internal containerized platform as well. So we'd use Kubernetes within Azure. We're now building out a full kind of multi-tenanted and eventually multi-cloud Kubernetes platform within the bank that we're going to start moving a lot of stuff onto as well. Anything that's stateless, anything that can be containerized. To pick up on Adam's point earlier, containers are the way forward. That's definitely the way that we want to go. It allows us to deliver faster, allows us to scale faster, and it allows us to be a lot more resilient when everything's just on one platform. Plus, it means we're not having to patch EC2 instances all the time, which is a little bit of a bonus, I suppose. Insurance seems to always be the first thing that gets moved across, and seems to always be the main one that we want to shift. Insurance is going to be one of the first containers tenants. We're moving all of the sales and service system for insurance over onto that containerized platform. That's a lot of what my kind of day-to-day is around at the moment. But what else have we done? We've built a consistent kind of deployment model. So the Edinburgh Newcastle Tech Hub piece that I kind of talked about earlier, if I look back kind of 2 or 3 years at Tesco Bank, each team that looked after a service maybe kind of did their own thing. Everyone had a set of Jenkins pipelines that were overly complex, that sort of deployed the tool that looked exactly the same like his tool over there, but did it in a different way that was slightly more opinionated. And no one quite knew how quite a lot of them worked, and there was a lot of kind of to and fro around all of that. So we've worked really, really hard to try and standardize everything as much as we can within the bank. Most of our internal software is built on either Java Spring Boot, tiny bits of Kotlin every now and then, or Node and React. So a lot of what we do today is very, very predictable. A lot of what we do today is the same in, for example, our credit card area as it is within loans, within insurance. So to that end, we started to build a bit of a consistent deployment model on that, which I'll talk a bit more about how that's going to enable us to go into CI/CD and all that. I've got some nice diagrams shortly. But we've also done a lot from the community side of things. Our engineers have really consistent career pathways and learning pathways now within the bank. We know how everyone kind of comes in from, for example, we've taken a lot of people from the likes of Code Clan or straight out of university, recent graduates that come in as what we call an associate engineer. They then go through to an engineer, to a senior engineer, to a lead, to a principal, etc. And we know exactly what we need to do in order to get people up to that level. Everyone can see the opportunities that are there kind of within the bank and what that looks like. So we've worked really hard to make sure that that's a really good opportunity, a really good experience for everyone. We've made sure that all of our engineers now have a lot of time to learn. We've very recently given our engineers and our teams 6 days within the year to make sure that they've got time to learn, time to set aside. Now that's 6 days minimum. We want to make sure that everyone has the time in order to learn what they need. That might be, for example, getting up to speed with Kubernetes if we've got system engineers that are more traditional in the EC2 space. It might be picking up a new language if they've been a Java developer up until now and they might want to move to Node. It might be migrating, for example, from kind of more Objective-C specific iOS applications into Swift, because we're moving a lot in that direction as well. So we've got quite a lot that's kind of happening there. So I want to touch on a few of the things that we're kind of doing. This is kind of a good interpretation of the landscape of what it looks like at the moment in the bank. We're migrating as many applications and services out of the data center as we possibly can. If something at the moment is in the data center and we look at it and we say that's probably something we can put in the cloud, it goes in the cloud. It's as simple as that. There's very, very few things that we can't migrate into the cloud. I think last count we've now got over 50 AWS accounts across various different environments. We tend to split things into different towers depending on what we need. So banking services, insurance services, customer journeys, etc. And then we've got consistent kind of environments for what those look like in our AWS account space. We automate everything. We don't use manual stuff anymore. Everything is through Jenkins pipelines. Everything now, for the most part, is through Terraform or a little bit of CloudFormation. If we're not doing it that way, then we're really not learning some of the lessons that we've used in the past. We're now moving into serverless. We're starting to look at using Lambdas a bit more. We've touched on them a little bit before, but we've not really used them in anger. We're now starting to substitute out key parts of our kind of stack and start to put Lambdas either driven through containers or front-to-buy application load balancers there to tackle some of our requests. And we're starting to launch our multi-cloud capability with Azure as well. We're building out a full Azure landing zone so that if we need to, we can start to use some of our tooling within Azure as well as within AWS. To that end, most of the tooling and most of the systems that we've been building recently are a bit more kind of tailored towards either one. Obviously, Terraform helps us to do that quite easily, but it allows us to use the best tools that we have at the time. You know, if something's best in AWS, we'll put it in AWS. Something's best in Azure, we'll put it in Azure. Containerisation is a big piece. The diagram there kind of shows you a little bit for what we're going for here within our platform. This started with software and test engineers predominantly. They were using containers locally. They were kind of using them to develop their software, to pass around and to test and to kind of make sure that they knew what was happening. We took insurance as the kind of pinch point here, and we decided we want to roll that out across the bank. We want to make it a capability. So we've now got our Kubernetes platform complete within our AWS space. It's multi-tenanted, so we can spin it up and use it for multiple apps and services. All of the platforms built out with using tools in an automated way, exactly the way you'd expect, using, frankly, automated, continuously deliverable pipelines. I can push a pull request up to the containers platform to create me a new namespace, and it goes through and deploys into Sandbox, Dev, Test, PP, and all the way through into Prod. So we've got now a consistent kind of experience for everyone who's coming on board with this. We're using, obviously, Terraform. We've decided to use Helm and a lot of the kind of CNCF native tool sets for this. All of the engineering teams within the bank are now starting to get on board with this. This has been quite a labour of love. Insurance is, of course, moving across again as well. But there's a lot of work going on at the moment and a lot of kind of upskilling of everyone to get on board with this. We can save a lot of money and a lot of time, and we can start to work on some of the more interesting problems if we start to move a lot of our payloads over onto containers and start to scale on that side of things. So this has been and it allows us to move on to continuous delivery. I'd like to think by now we've kind of got continuous integration down. All the software engineers, all across the bank are using Jenkins to integrate their software, to run all of their unit tests, their automated tests. We've got that down, that's perfect. What we've maybe not quite got yet is how we kind of deliver that continuously, especially through our environments. So kind of touching on what we did, what I was talking around earlier, that common deployment tool or that common deployment orchestrator is a lot of what we're using to try and drive this forward, to make sure that we've got a reliable kind of convention over configuration pattern for building all of this stuff out. There's probably a little bit opinionated, but it's one that our kind of system and software engineers can contribute to. So it orchestrates tools such as Terraform, such as Ansible. I've got a question. Excellent.
Yep. So for your continuous delivery, have you looked at feature flagging?
So feature flagging is an interesting piece that we're starting to pick up on just now. So we've used it on and off in various different systems throughout the bank, usually through environment variables that we deploy into different accounts to try and kind of set things on and off through there. So it's something that I think we've used internally within technology, within our engineering teams. We've never looked at, for example, exposing that to our product teams, exposing that kind of ability to turn things on and off. We're starting to pick this up a lot more now. I would say it's something that is an ongoing discussion between a lot of myself and a lot of the other practice leads at the moment. We understand that it's going to be a lot easier to do that sort of thing, especially then because right now we can deliver continuously on small changes, things that are predictable, things that we've got a full automated test platform that we understand. Big things, yeah, we're probably not quite ready just yet, and that's kind of part of the journey that we're going on at the moment. So all of our continuous delivery hopefully doesn't come across as a shock to you, is driven through pull requests and merges. We try and use trunk-based development, or kind of a little more now, especially within our kind of system engineering practice, to make sure that kind of delivers all the way through. Where things that used to kind of take sort of hours and days and weeks to kind of get through, was we needed to kind of prove through gigantic regression packs and things, exactly how everything integrated within the bank, what this API did if we kind of moved it over here. We're now starting to pick some of these bits up and start to actually see how we can deliver into our dev environments immediately, so we can start to automatically prove things through automated smoke testing, and then upwards into what we call our kind of system integration test environments and beyond. There's a lot of work and a lot of kind of bits and pieces to still go through here, such as exploring feature flagging and the like. But what we want in the end is kind of a consistent route to live and build process throughout all the teams. So these are some of the kind of challenges that we've got to work on now, some of the kind of interesting problems that we're kind of coming up against. Community, there's always got to be a slide on community. I think we've done quite a lot in this space as well. We've kind of adopted what Tesco call a blended working model. So I know some companies have gone full remote, some companies got what we call hybrid. We've chosen to use a different name, blended, and the reason we do that is because we come together in our tech hubs, for example, in Edinburgh or in Newcastle, within our teams, but only for moments that matter, only for reasons that are reasonably to be there. We don't mandate things like 2 days a week, bums on seats, anything along those lines, because that's not why people want to be in offices. We want people to be together for team events, for things such as sprint planning, retrospectives, for things such as community days, hackathons, things like this. We want people to get together for the right reasons, but we also want people to be open to going into the office. We know that some folks prefer to be in a bit more than others. We know that some folks like to get out of the house. Maybe there's a bit of a difficult environment there to work in or something. So we've got open collaboration spaces to encourage remote and on-site people to work together. We've spent quite a lot on getting our kind of tech integrated on that side of things. We've got kind of fancy presence units and things. We've got microphones, webcams, everything, not just like the sort of standard horrible microphone, but one where you can actually hear everyone sitting around a table and you still feel part of the meeting while all that's going on. We've spent a lot of time on our career pathways and our job family, so everything's really well understood, as I kind of explained earlier. We've got a lot going on just now. We've had some AWS on-site events. We've got another one coming up shortly, actually. Hackathons. We do a lot of internal hackathons where we'll all kind of get together and try and tackle a problem all at once, get as many people involved, and just kind of work through something. And we spend a lot of time with our communities of practice as well, within our test communities, our engineering communities. We encourage everyone to kind of get together and talk about things that they want to talk about. So that might be an interesting problem that they've been working through, some new technology that they've been exploring. We try and make sure that we've got, that we kind of enable our teams to use that as much as possible, but we also get out of the way and let them drive it, because it's up to them. It's for them. So what does kind of level 2 look like so far? I think now we've got kind of 3 hot desking and collaboration spaces. So but obviously we have colleagues working remote most of the time. I've kind of put 7 technology product teams. I think that was probably an estimate. There's probably quite a few more than that, frankly. Those are the kind of big ones that are working on some of the bigger products that we've got in the works at the moment. There's quite a lot of other platform teams and other kind of bigger teams that are going on in the background there as well. We've got now over 300 engineers across software, system, data and test. Ian will probably point out to me at the minute that I've got this wildly wrong, and there's way, way more than that. But we've got a huge amount of engineers within our business at the moment, and we're still growing. We're still bringing in more because we still have more to do. I think at the moment we have around 10 deliveries to production per week, and by delivery I don't just mean a content delivery or something along those lines. I mean an actual change, an actual kind of big kind of release or something along those lines. So we've got quite a lot that's going through. So why am I here today? Why am I kind of talking to you all about this? Well, I want some of you to come and join us. We've got a lot of open roles at the moment, all the way from things such as domain architects. We need an engineering lead to come and own and look after some of our containers platforms. We're looking for engineers of all different sorts. So Android, iOS, Node, React, Java, cloud engineers, test engineers, API engineers. We've got tons. If anyone wants to come and talk to me about any of them, I'll probably be able to talk about some of them more than others, but I'll do my best. And I kind of wanted to end on, I tried to find like a level 3 slide, here we come, blah, 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 but all I could find was a game over slide. So we'll leave on that slightly positive note, but thank you very much. Has anyone got any questions? Yeah.
I know you mentioned that you did migration from Azure to AWS, but what services did you leave on Azure and why?
So a lot of the Azure services we're using at the minute are the kind of the more native Microsoft ones. So a lot of it is the Active Directory integration that we've got on there at the moment. We're kind of starting to tie into a couple of the Microsoft services like Power BI and other things we've got coming up. So what we're going to be doing is using those to integrate on the Microsoft platform where it's maybe a bit best suited. Maybe spin some of our things off over there if they're a little bit more suited to the Microsoft platform anyway, like Windows ones or SQL Server, and then use AWS for the stuff that AWS is best for. So we're trying to split everything and kind of use the right tool for the right job, if you know what I mean.
Okay, and another question.
Yeah?
So you mentioned a bunch of stuff, but you didn't say anything about Python. Is there no Python used in your work?
Oh, we do use Python. So a lot of the Python that we actually have out at the moment, there's probably quite a lot in the kind of data science space. We've obviously got a lot of exploration going on over there. But to be honest, I use Python day-to-day to script a lot of our stuff in the automation space within our cloud environment. So if I can't get a bash script to do what I want, and I need to hook up to AWS APIs and things, I'll just string it together with some Python. So quite a lot of our teams are using Python as well. Yeah. Hi.
Another hint for you, you might want to look at contract testing as well. Because that's for testing that your API doesn't break other APIs. That's quite a good thing you might want to look at as well.
Yeah, we're exploring a lot more of how we're going to automate a lot more of that side of things at the moment.
CD isn't an easy thing. People think it is.
Oh no.
There's so much to do for it. Yeah, it is a bit. Bit of a nightmare, and there's like a million tools as well. So
we've got
to be careful. If you fall into a certain feature flagging platform and you're like, oh, it doesn't quite deliver what we want.
Yeah, so we've still got a bit of work to do there, I think, to explore it. Yeah. James.
You've got big regulatory challenges kind of bringing people on remote in financial services?
To be honest, we haven't really, no. So because of the way that we kind of operate and the way that we have things set up, we're able quite easily to kind of bring people on remote, give them the kit that they need, and we separate everything out as much as we need to. So I can obviously log into systems that I need to within my laptop. I can't do silly things like go release and stuff into production or making huge changes on there, because that would be daft without kind of going through those sorts of periods. So we've had all of the controls and everything in place for a while now to allow people to work from home. So to be honest, there wasn't really a challenge with us kind of moving towards a remote first environment or anything along those lines. Quite happily, thankfully. So it's been quite positive. Cool. I think that's it. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, one more.
You said you had 7 product teams and maybe more. Have you pretty much moved away from traditional project teams, or do you still have project teams running in?
We kind of have a bit running in parallel at the moment. So depending on what it is that we're kind of operating on, depending on what it is that we're delivering, a data center migration move for a product, for example, just sometimes fits better within a more traditional project delivery piece rather than something that's maybe a little bit more of a feature-driven product team. So we tend to try and align the products around something that's a specific goal, around how that's going to work. Maybe it's a specific value stream, such as maybe our credit card area, our loans area, our insurance area. So we have a bit of a mix at the moment, to be honest. And depending on what your kind of role is and where it is you get involved, software and test engineers tend to get a little bit more involved in the product teams more than others. As a system engineer myself, I kind of gravitate more towards kind of some of the platform stuff, some of the kind of more traditional roles. So yeah, it's a little bit of a hybrid at the moment, to be honest.
Fair enough. How do you find that works with sort of product team? Does the sort of resource get drawn from the product teams to the project, or is it sort of like a separate pool of resource?
We tend to try and kind of push people across. So if we've got people, for example, that are in product teams, they're usually, and I say usually because I'll never say this 100%, dedicated entirely to that product team. The last thing we want is to start pulling people in and out of Scrum teams when they're kind of embedded in that area. They've been working together with product owners for a while. They understand everything and they've kind of learned the knowledge within that area. The last thing we want to do is say, oh, but we need another person over here because this project manager's got an issue on project X. So we're still working through some of the challenges with that, but we're obviously always trying to protect the teams that are actually making the deliveries, because if we start moving people in and out, how do you measure velocity? How do you try and work out what it is that's happening in those sorts of areas? So that's usually what we're trying to do at the moment. Cool. All right. Thank you very much.